Today's signing draws our ships even closer together, but we will not be anchored in place. We will raise our sails, the sails of two proud nations, charting a course toward a more secure and a more prosperous future. This signing is not the end of an effort. It really is just the beginning of a journey, one of deeper cooperation, greater understanding, and enduring partnership between our two great peoples, our militaries, and our nations. Thank you so much for receiving me. Thank you very much for the hospitality. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for the incredible effort you put into making this agreement happen. It's a great honor for me to be here to sign this on behalf of the Canadian people. Thank you, sir.
We now invite Secretary Teodoro to begin his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Minister McGuinty. And I must credit Minister McGuinty for taking the time and the effort to come here today in spite of a busy parliamentary calendar schedule in order to place in the public awareness the importance of this agreement to both our countries. So for that, we must give him a round of applause. I believe that this agreement is a product of true convergence. First, our leaderships, from President Marcos, who, as Minister McGuinty told us earlier, had extensive discussions prior to and in the sidelines of APEC with Prime Minister Carney. And both gentlemen talked about various areas of convergence to include security. Secondly, it is also a product of our Department of National Defense, the Ministry of Defense of Canada, our Foreign Affairs Secretary, and Ambassador David Hartman. Third, our staffs worked double time to get this agreement finished in record time. And finally, the most important ingredient, second to the last, are our people-to-people exchanges and the will of the Filipino people, both here and in Canada, and the people of Canada who view the Philippines as a natural partner in moving forward in both the security domain, the economic domain, and in other domains, not only to respond to current issues, but also to have a partnership of common development to face the challenges of the future. From economic development to cybersecurity to humanitarian assistance and disaster response, disaster risk reduction and resilience, Canada and the Philippines share a lot of common interests. However, underpinning the SOVFA is the foundation on which it is built. It is to preserve the international order as a rules-based international order, respecting the sovereignty and dignity of not only states, but also of its people as human beings with the rights and the freedoms that they enjoy. And a state can only prove that it is serious in protecting international law if it protects the rights of its own people. A state that does not protect the rights of its people has no business claiming that it upholds international law. I think that is beyond argument. And so this agreement converges all these interests into one of the most important projections of trust and confidence between nations, that our armed forces and defense establishments can converge, can work together, not only bilaterally, but with other like-minded partners to preserve and enforce peace and stability, to deter instability, to actually form a stable foundation and a peaceful venue for the future generations to grow, to reap the bounty that nature has given, protected by international law, particularly UNCLOS, to one's country, to protect our sea lanes of communication, of which the Philippines, as an archipelagic country, needs in order to secure its survival, and Canada also needs for importation and export of its goods, protection of its people, protection of its domains, which are under threat daily, not only in the traditional military sense, but also in the digital and information domains, of which both countries will now have the formalized and legalized foundation and framework to work and collaborate with deeper. And it will also give both countries a chance to converge on a personal level, the members of both armed forces, to build trust, to build confidence, to build awareness and knowledge, which will cascade to bringing Canada and the Philippines on a more resilient footing internally, because it both helps, because we can share resilience mechanisms and information, and also externally, which is very important to provide the shield of law, to provide us and to shroud us, to provide a shroud against those forces that we may exist now, that we want to disrupt the way of life and our peace, stability, and security, but more importantly, to have a framework of predicting, preventing, or responding to the threats of the future which we may not know now. I once again extend my gratitude and that of the President Marcos to Minister McGuinty for his leadership in bringing this milestone, which is the first status of visiting forces agreement that Canada has entered into with any ASEAN or any Asian country, Indo-Pacific country. So it is a milestone too for Canada, and it is an honor for the Philippines to be the first partner of Canada in this endeavor. And together we will be stronger for the greater good of the Indo-Pacific. I'd like to thank also our leaders, Prime Minister Carney and President Marcos, for pushing us to get this agreement in place. So once again, thank you very much, and we look forward to hitting the ground running and making this agreement a reality.
We do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sirs. We will now proceed with the joint press conference. We now call on Joe Banahan of the ABS-CBN to give his question.
Good afternoon, Secretary Teodoro and Minister McGuinty. Hello, Joe Banahan from ABS-CBN. To Secretary Teodoro, when is this SOVFA going to take effect, and do we need to have this ratified by the Senate, or are we going to expect joint drills anytime soon?
No, we need to have it ratified by the Senate as insofar as our Constitution is concerned. So what will happen right now is we get the President's, it is ratified by the President actually, and then that ratification is concurred in by the Senate. So we get the Senate's concurrence, and we will work on this very quickly.
Just a follow-up question. How is this defense deal different from other BFAs that we have with other countries?
The difference will be in the specific, shall we say, specializations that we each have, and the distinct experiences of our armed forces and the way they are structured. So we have much to learn and much to converge in with Canada, distinct from Australia and the other countries that we have. But we will converge with them in upholding the rules-based international order. So it is important to have the bilateral arrangements because of the distinctions between these countries, but we all converge in one area, and that's upholding international law. Thank you.
Thank you. We now call on Kenneth Basilio of Business World to give his question.
Good afternoon, ministers. The first part of my question is addressed to Secretary Teodoro. So, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth last week unveiled a task force aimed at supporting the Philippines' deterrence efforts in the South China Sea. How would the task force specifically go about in helping Manila deter Chinese aggression in the waterway? And how would the task force influence the balance of power in the South China Sea? And for the second part, for Defense Minister McGuinty, is Canada also looking at a similar task force once the VFA with the Philippines takes effect? Thank you.
I'll answer a bit of both. The Task Force Philippines was unveiled by both Secretary Hegseth and myself. It is an agreement that we came about because it is an agreement between U.S. Indo-PACOM. It is an operational arrangement between U.S. Indo-PACOM and the Armed Forces of the Philippines as the task force to converge all our bilateral activities. And that is why we also, General Bronner has already started the strategic command, which has come into being, which will form part of that task force. But as we said, a task force, we use the term task force. A task force has a specific mission, and that mission role is to converge with our resilience, both internally and externally, and it is a, shall we say, an efficiency mechanism to funnel all the activities. So we can we do not only converge in deterrence, but we also converge because of the frequency of natural calamities that have beset us. This task force will put more regularity into an immediate and quick response to the natural calamities that we are facing. Secondly, it is a function of the Mutual Defense Treaty, not the Visiting Forces Agreement. All these task forces are under the different articles of the Mutual Defense Treaty which we have with the United States. That is the basis of the task force. It is nothing new, but an operating agreement between General Bronner and Admiral Paparo raised up to our level. And upon the, shall we say, with the permission of both President Trump and President Marcos.
Canada wants to build on a solid, loyal relationship that goes back decades. Canada and the Philippines are natural allies. And Canada learned some time ago that, and our approach continues to be that we're stronger together. And so the notion of moving forward with a task force is a positive one. It's a good one. We see that increasingly it's about strategic partnerships like this, where two like-minded nations steeped in the same values can go forward and support each other and share and learn from each other. And as the Secretary and I discussed a moment ago, or a few minutes ago, the breadth of that partnership is expanding. We'll be moving forward on training fronts, on exchanges with our military colleges, information sharing, understanding of cyber and cybersecurity. The Secretary was mentioning the incredible work that he and his team has done on new cyber standards for the Philippines. We're all contending with these challenges. And of course, maritime domain awareness. We hope to be present in the military exercises like Balikatan next spring. So there's so much positive that comes from this agreement today. It brings us closer together and builds on that 75 years of experience and partnership and trust and loyalty to each other. This is a very big day for, I think, for both of our countries.
And we hope to see the snowbirds here in the future.
Well, there's two kinds of snowbirds, Mr. Secretary.
The CL-44
Yeah.
snowbirds, yeah. The original ones.
They're the snowbirds who, the planes, and then there are the Canadians who leave the winter.
No,
They're
no,
the snowbirds who fly
no,
away out of
okay,
the cold.
both,
Yeah.
both,
They'll be here.
both.
They'll be
That's
here.
why Air Canada is
That's
increasing its
exactly
frequency.
right. Now that we've expanded our flights, direct
Yeah.
flights to Manila, we'll be here.
Up next, we have Patrick De Jesus of PTV News.
Good afternoon. The Philippines recently held 2 days of naval drills in the West Philippine Sea with New Zealand, Australia, and the United States. And the Chinese military once again called the Philippines as the troublemaker in the region by inviting what they call non-regional parties. For Secretary Teodoro, how would you like to respond to this statement, and if Minister McGuinty would also like to give his reaction?
All right. I think that statement is indicative of the regard of China for international law. Those exercises were held in open seas, in the high seas, where there is freedom of navigation and no one country controls that area. So if China makes that statement that you invite an outsider in the open sea area, then it is indicative of how it views international law. So are they saying that they own the area, or they have exclusive jurisdiction and sovereignty over the high seas? Are they saying that? If they say that, then you have your answer, how they regard international law, which is precisely why these kinds of activities have to continue to uphold international law. And it's not only in the seas, but also in the airspace. We see what they did to Australia in an international airspace with the P-8, where there was a dangerous maneuver by the Chinese. So if China feels that it is an intrusion on an area which under international law is a common area, then we refute that.
Would Minister McGuinty also like to react on that? And if Canada will also join future naval drills with the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea?
I think it's important to remember that Canada has been and remains resolute in support of Filipino sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is something we recognize. The question of moving forward together is exactly why we're here signing and executing this agreement today. How can we share in improving the situation in the region? How can we engage further? How can we learn from each other? How can we take the leadership and the advice of the experience of Filipino experts in the region? This is a big moment for Canada as it moves to sign this new agreement, as the Secretary said, the first of its kind in the Indo-Pacific. And we're looking forward to moving on this pretty quickly. We have some very important touch points, a plan of attack in terms of where we're implementing, how we're implementing. As I mentioned earlier, training and exchanges and information sharing. And one of the other things we talked about was some of the emergency management that goes on in the Philippines and Canada. Canada's, like the Philippines, subject to natural challenges now. We had over 1,000 wildfires this year in Canada. So this is new for us. We're having to contend with this, as you are, and other forces at play that are seemingly not going away. So we're going to continue to build on this very strong relationship and learn from each other.
Last question will be from Rex Espiritu of Manila Standard.
Good afternoon, ministers. This question is addressed to Secretary Teodoro. Sir, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. approached Chinese President Xi Jinping yesterday, I think in APEC. So what can we expect after that?
I really don't know, because our job really is to pursue Philippine resilience and uphold international law. So our defense engagements under President Marcos is subject to a plan already and subject to guidance. Two pillars. The first pillar is internal resilience and hardening. Second are our defense partnerships and convergence with like-minded countries. So we cannot put any meaning into the gesture of President Marcos of approaching President Xi Jinping. Probably it's a personal gesture, but the policy does not change.
Thank you, Secretary.
That ends our activity this afternoon. We'd like to thank Secretary Teodoro and Minister McGuinty for their time this afternoon. And we congratulate them on the historic signing of the SOVFA between the Philippines and Canada.
I'll see you soon and come back.
Direct flights?
No, I really like you for the
We'd like to request our guests to remain in their place except for the delegation from Canada and the Philippines while our principals leave the venue. Thank you very much, everyone, and happy All Souls Day. Thank you for joining us today.